Well, hello everyone. I am here with Bob Kulp, and today we're going to talk about Bob Kulp, the individual, the individual that has represented the 69th district for a period of time here in central Wisconsin, and just kind of want to recap your time in office, what made you really get into this office in the first place, and we want to share that with our audience. And down the road, if you guys are listening, this would be a great opportunity just to learn a little bit more about Mr. Kulp. But Mr. Kulp, first thing I'd ask you, can I call you Bob today?
Absolutely. I prefer that over Mr. Culp. That sounds scary.
It does a little bit. So, Bob, I've known you for a period of time, and I've gotten to know you more as the representative of the 69th over the last few years. But take me back a little bit before you really came into office. Did you ever have an idea or an interest to run as someone of political interest in our state or even a local level? How did this idea for you to even start?
Sure. I was involved in advocacy in Washington, D.C., as well as in Madison for the Roofing Industry Association, as well as the Centergy Group locally. And so I was a familiar face in the Capitol. And sometime in early 2013, my predecessor, Scott Souter, who was the majority leader at that time, hinted to me at one point, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. And I kind of suspected that he would be asking me to consider running for state assembly. And really, if you roll the clock back 10 years ago, I assumed that I would at some point end up in U.S. Congress, just because that was kind of my friend Reed Ribble from Eastern Wisconsin did that. And I kind of thought, that's a way to make a difference. Well, I'm awfully glad that never transpired and never will, because I simply have no passion for that role at this point. And I can't imagine ever doing that. But so he had hinted he's going to have a conversation, wants to have a conversation with me. And in July of 2013, he contacted me and said, hey, would you consider a run for state assembly? And I said, as I left the office here, I told the folks, no way, no how. The answer will be no. And I went, and he kind of made a case for why it would make sense to get involved at the state assembly level. And I came back and told my wife, and she said, who had always been kind of, I really don't think it's a good idea. But she said, as you walked out the door, when you went to meet with him, she said, I kind of had the impression that this was your time and that you should pursue this. My management team at Culp's all got on board. And next thing you know, I was in the middle of a first campaign, which was really probably the most strenuous campaigning that I did, because the 69th is really very, very red and reflects my values quite well. So I won that race handily, as well as the others. But really, I've been blessed to serve the 69th district. It's been a lot of fun for 7 years, for 85 months to the day, exactly, if you want to count it that way.
So when you talk about running that very first term, what is, I have to imagine each and every year as you were in office, you learn more and more, and that cycle of being in office and the cycle of government takes place. But what were some of the things that maybe funny moments or just things that were just the light bulb went off for you when you were running that first year that kind of gave you the confidence that said, you know what, I'm going to do well with this?
Well, and whether or not I did well will be left up to history to judge. I believe I did some things that added value to the people of Wisconsin. But what I believe that I could bring to the state assembly is a small business perspective. There are other small business owners there as well. So it certainly had a team of people that got it when it comes to understanding how business works. But it was kind of just taking that real life experience and trying to be relatable along the way. I think I've done a fair job of that with my social media presence, which was there prior to being in state assembly and will likely continue in some form or format. But, as far as any real light bulb moments, there wasn't anything there. Other than the fact that I believed that I could do a good job of representing not only small business owners, but people who were struggling along the way. And everybody kind of has an idea that if they play by the rules and work hard, they'll succeed. And I still believe that. And I think that was really the legacy of what I brought to it, is that playing by the rules and minding your business and working hard was the way to do it. And I took that to the state assembly. And then, along the way, honestly, after about 5 to 7 years, I sensed that passion starting to to subside in a way. And I'm just being honest and just very straightforward with you here this morning, Brandon, because I have nothing to hide and nothing to run for, which is good, and nothing to run from. It's a matter of saying, okay, I did a lot of things that I'm happy with, and now it's time to pass the baton on. So really, that was, it's kind of like I've done my time, I've done my duty, I've done what I can, worked on a lot of things that I'm happy and proud of. Now it's time to move on.
Say if down the road your grandkids are listening to this at some point or another. I mean, was there any moments or any things that, actual things that you did that you talk about, things that you're proud of, things that you'd want to speak to, or just, kind of pin your own hat on?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I worked on early on and wasn't 100% successful in getting all the way through is personal property tax, getting rid of that. We're one of the only upper Midwestern states that's where you still have to, as a business, catalog and categorize everything that you have every year for the state. We got rid of a portion of that. We still had more work to be done. And I don't know, I'm sure that there are people there that'll pick that up. That is a, kind of a technical thing that most people don't get. And so I won't go into the details of that. But what I'm really most proud of is the chairing the Legislative Council Study Committee on the Identification and Management of Dyslexia. Wisconsin is the only state that up until last year had nothing in state statutes or on the books or even an acknowledgement that there was such a thing as dyslexia. And really, so many kids get left behind in their early years because they don't know how to read. So there was this task force that was put together, and they were looking for a chairperson for it. And we're having a hard time finding one. And I was just crazy enough to say, I'll do it, because 7 kids, have some that have dyslexia to greater or lesser extents. And I really believed that, and this was also a passion of my wife's, I believed that we could elevate our reading scores, which 4th grade reading scores had fallen in 95. We were 3rd in rank among the states, had declined all the way down to 33rd by 2010. And that was before Act 10 and all of that. So it wasn't related to teachers getting less money. It was related to not embracing the new and best ways of teaching. So again, you can sense my passion even now about that. And I could go on and bore you and the audience and my grandkids in 50 years from now to tears relative to this. But that was really the thing that I was most proud of, was chairing that dyslexia study committee. And while it seems benign, it actually was very, very controversial. I mean, it pitted the education establishment against the people who were actually looking at the science, including UW professors, and saying brain science has a lot to do with how kids learn to read. Let's get this. So trying to put that together and chairing that study committee was likely the highlight of my time, and brought the most passion into the Capitol from people all over the state. So really, and what we ended up getting out of that was a single bill that basically had those two warring factions, if you will, come together to put together a dyslexia guidebook that DPI would oversee. So we didn't move the ball. I had 6 or 8 other bills related to dyslexia that I wanted to get done. We didn't get them done. There are people in the Capitol that are willing to pick those up and go with it. But that is likely the thing that is the thing that gave me the most satisfaction.
So you came into state assembly, you were inaugurated in January of 2014, correct?
Actually, December of 2013, December 4th of 2013.
Okay, December. Gotcha. Yeah. So, obviously, you said you were in the Capitol building, you were part of legislation, throughout the years through, the different associations that you were a part of. But, coming into the Capitol as a state assembly representative, was there ever any moments, you're a strong individual, you present yourself very well, but there was ever any moments that you just kind of felt intimidated, or there was just moments like, I have a lot to learn here?
Oh, well, those probably never really stopped. Although, the last 3 or 4 years, certainly it takes months, if not years, to get the hang of it. But, driving up, especially in the early years, but even toward the end, I'd drive up and I'd say, this is a very big honor for me to drive up to our beautiful state capitol and know that I have an office inside and staff inside that are able to ask anything of any state agency, not necessarily always get the answers, but just having that. And, I think that I made some very good decisions with regards to staff over the course of the 7 years that I was there. I had 5 total staff people, 2 in office the last 6 years. So 2 of them were in my office at any given time. I didn't have a lot of staff turnover. And I think that's because I brought people on that had the ability to navigate the water. They weren't new to the building as well. So they knew more than just where the restrooms were in the copy machine. They knew how to help out with getting the legislation through that was important to me all the way through the process. So not any really aha moments like I'm overwhelmed, but more just there's a lot to be done here. And, for the record, I'd like to say that we're often told that, we do nothing but fighting. Well, that is really not the truth. 85% of what we did in Governor Walker's last term was actually unanimous. That means there were no votes at all. So 85%, 84.4 to be exact, percent of the time, we voted in lockstep as state representatives and state senators around the state, irrespective of political spectrum and ideology, for the good of Wisconsin people. So now people could actually take that and say that, well, the state, it probably wasn't good stuff that we did, but we did a lot of good stuff. And we fought about the things that we disagreed on. But that was the minority of it, but it became the majority of the news story.
Oh, and absolutely. I mean, discussion is good and you need to have healthy discussion. And when you find those common interests and you can create bills that pass unanimously, that is when you're going to see government be successful. Absolutely. And for the people that matter.
Yeah.
So for those that don't really understand your position or understand the position of being an assembly person in the state of Wisconsin, you really are rerunning for re-election every 2 years.
That is correct.
As a state
assembly.
Yeah, in the state assembly, you're running for re-election every 2 years. There's commonly the joke that is made that 1 year you're campaigning and 1 year you're in office. Do you feel, or did you feel throughout the process that you had to did that continual cycle of having to rerun or run for re-election, did that spark your motive or spark your ambition to set new goals for yourself and for the 69th? Or how did you deal with that constant renewal of your position?
Well, obviously I was blessed in the 69th. I ran unopposed twice. So that was much less difficult than running with competition. And I don't know if that's because the 69th folks just said, that I reflect their values and there's no sense in trying to shake it up and that I'm doing the job, or if it was a lack of desire on the other side of the political aisle to engage. I don't know. But for me, I found that it was enough time. The 14 months that we're in there doing the work of the people is enough time to do it. And people in the state legislature, like people everywhere, they will put off till the last minute things that need to get done. And if you don't have a deadline for it, you could make the deadline October 15th or whatever, 3 weeks before the election, but there's really nothing to be gained there in not doing it in February or March, because if you don't have a deadline, you have nothing to work toward. And, our state assembly and state legislature actually is kind of verge of full time. There are literally state legislatures, like in, I believe, Texas, meets 1 month out of a 2-year cycle. And that's all they meet. The rest of it is constituent services. There are state legislatures like Iowa, where there are shared staff people and they actually share offices and have little cubicles. So each state kind of sets itself up differently. And no matter how you do it, you're likely going to have somebody, say you're not doing your job. That kind of goes with the territory. But 14 months, I think, in a 2-year cycle is really enough to get the work of the people done. The rest of the time, your office and the staff is there to help out with constituent issues, which we had a lot of this year with unemployment claims and the like with the COVID situation. So I think we're set up okay. There are other states who set up differently, but I think we get the job done.
So in the last 24 months or in the last 2 years, you were reelected for this last term and you served the people. And I believe was it the spring of 2020 that you said that you were not going to be rerunning for this next term?
Yeah, the decision was public in actually exactly a year ago. I think the 6th through the 7th, as I recall, of January a year ago, I announced that I wouldn't run again. And, that decision had really probably been made a year prior to that in my mind. Just took, 6, 8, 10 months at least before that. Just took that amount of time to allow, my mind to just fully be settled and to have it be the right time in the process. But yeah, State Representative Mary Williams, who used to represent the 87th district, friend of mine for 30 years, but from Medford, she told me as she was getting out, our terms overlapped by a year. She said, "Bob, quit before you're cynical." And as I told friends the past 2 or 3 years, that 2 years or so, I'm not cynical yet, but I can see it in the windshield. And I think there's a need to have a turnover, because if you start to get to the point where you believe that you are owed this, or that the title does something for you, or that any number of entitlement angles from an elected official are not healthy to the process. So it's better if you sense that coming on in yourself to say, hey, it's time for me to pass the baton to someone else who's going to bring passion. And I got to tell you, I'm excited about what Donna Rosar brings to the district. She has a completely different view on so much more information and understanding of health and of some of those kind of things, that she's going to just do a very good job in places that I had no expertise. And that really is the cool thing about the state assembly and state legislature as a whole around the state. Everybody brings their different expertise to the table, and it makes for, I think, very good legislation for the people of Wisconsin.
Well, and you bring up a really valid point there. You came from a small business background. Donna comes from a long tenure in healthcare throughout the state. There's people that have been in the ag industry, attorneys, law, school systems. When you bring those types of individuals as leaders to the state, you're really bringing the people of the state in their professions and interest as well. So, that's encouraging. It's encouraging to, know that that's supported here in our state, and especially even in our own district. You mentioned that, you came to the conclusion after 8 to 10 months of thinking. It doesn't sound like that just came to you overnight. And there was obviously some things that you had to process as you made that decision. Was there anything that you felt that, I'm really not ready to, pass on the torch yet because there's still some work that you wanted to get done, or ambitions that you had that you felt were right for the 69th district?
I think the time was right, and it was the right time for me personally, for any number of reasons. And I don't want to go into those because I know we've got a shorter interview, and you don't want to. I could talk all day on it, and it wouldn't be helpful necessarily to most folks here. But one of the things that made it easy as well is the fact that we seem to be, some of the things that I did want to get done, the governor probably wouldn't sign, our current governor. And that's not to say that I was right and he was wrong. That's only to indicate that the things that I wanted to get done, I had 1 or 2 bills that I thought just were completely common sense that were vetoed. And so you end up saying, okay, I could go through this process another whole 14 months or 2 years, work through more legislation, but would that really be something that, if I know it's not going to go across the finish line and actually be helpful to the people of Wisconsin in the way that I envision, then why go through that exercise? It seemed to me personally that I had more valuable ways to spend my time. And I guess we'll see if that fleshes out back in the business and back in central Wisconsin as a, not as a state rep, whether my time actually is more valuable, but that's the way I looked at that from an equation perspective.
Yeah, and kind of a personal question to kind of lean off of or transition into, you went into the state capitol, you went into the process of building and creating bills that hopefully advanced our state. Now being out of it and looking back, has your confidence in state government increased because of your time served? And are you able to instill in others that, our government does work, even though sometimes we might not see change that some people are strongly for?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that question is put very well. One of the things that is, I try to do that all the time, to say, no, I think we got your back, because the media, and especially in this case, talk radio, will come through with the belief that the talk radio show host knows more than those who are elected. And I know it probably happens vice versa as well, but there's always information that you have and that as a sitting state representative that you know in your heart the decision is the right one, but that doesn't keep the especially talk radio, but even standard media from throwing stones. And it's often because they either don't have the information that you have, or they have it and don't believe it, or they simply have it and ignore it because that's what makes their platform successful, is making people angry at government. So they come back in, have that drug going on in their heads that hooks them to their media. So absolutely, I have more faith in the sitting state legislature in Wisconsin than I do in the people who stand on the sidelines, don't have all the information, and throw stones.
Oh, you couldn't have answered that question any better than me state my own opinion on that. In my 10 year of doing this, I've learned a lot. And a lot of times there's stuff that we learn that we realize that it isn't time for the world to know yet. The general public doesn't need to have this information because it doesn't help the situation. And sometimes, and I think that's where maybe media has been steered wrong a little bit, is it's not their job to write the story. It's their job to tell the story, but they also have to know and have the respect that the story is still developing and, work is being done here. And sometimes they get away, and sometimes they get in the way of that, and sometimes they help that. I hope for the most part that most media outlets, when it comes to public emergency, they're transparent, they're honest, and they're very forward with the public. But sometimes when there's policy behind it, that you're right, they have a sense of, and I say they, but I'm part of they have a sense that they want to control the outcome. And that's not what our intentions or our job should be.
Yeah. That's good reflection from a person in the media. And I know that there are many honest brokers in the media and journalists that do their jobs, but it isn't universal.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That's just the nature of it.
Yep.
As you look at the next season of your life, and we'll call it a season because you're going from one major thing to the next thing. Mm-hmm. What are you looking forward to? What does Bob Kulp have on your radar for things that you want to do next in your life? Because I don't think you're someone that's just gonna sit down and sit back and maybe if you are going to do that, congratulations, because you've earned it.
Well, at 54 years old, I hope to have another 30 years of good health and ability to have my kids and grandkids up at our cabin. We actually kind of this spring, when COVID hit, moved up to the north side of Merrill, up in the 35th district. Obviously still have the office and business here in Stratford. The intention, really, the focus here has to be turning this business over to a next generation or some kind of transition. That really is probably the biggest focus of where we're at, and just continuing to be a good place for people to be employed, and a profitable entity, which is important if you're going to stay in business. So that's really where my focus is. And as my wife and I sit down and talk about it, the biggest thing that comes to our mind is relationships and relating to people, whether that's our own family, our coworker group here at the company, or the community as a whole. Is that we realize that the only thing that we really get to take with us uh, from time into eternity, and as a Christian, those things are important to me, is the relationships that we build and the ability to relate to them in a way that is frankly pleasing to our Heavenly Father. And that's kind of what Laura and I see. So do I have the script written for the next 5, 10, 30 years? I don't. But do I know what my core principles are? Yes. Do I know how those will work out in a functional way every day? No. But I think the biggest thing is to have a core guiding principle, and relationships would be that.
Gotcha. Well, I know I can speak for a lot of people in the 69th that we really do appreciate your service and your time at the state representing our district. Do you have a message or anything you want to say to the members of the 69th, or even a message as Donna takes seat? I think she was 2 or 3 days ago that she officially took the seat of office.
Yep. Well, the 69th is 58,000 very diverse people that, as a rule, are just really happy to just go to work every day and work hard and play by the rules, as I said earlier. And that sounds like a campaign script, and it could be, but I think it's what really everybody wants, is to just let me do what I know that I need to do. And within that 58,000 people, there's a wide variety of political perspective. There's, from the left to the right. And I would just say that we're peaceful up here. I think we're happy. I think as a rule, I know that the district will be very well served by Donna, as I said before, the experience she brings and all of that. But I would just say that I think that very good days will lie ahead as we continue to do what we know we need to do and work off of our core principles to identify those and then to work off of those. I think will be helpful, and to not be easily swayed by all of the stuff that we see on the TV screens and on our news, on our Facebook or Twitter feed, because those things are just designed to take away our peace and our joy and our love. And I think those are some of the things that are most important.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, thank you for taking the time to join me today. For all of you guys tuning in, thank you for listening. Godspeed and God bless, and we'll speak to each other.